Hey folks, and welcome to Strength Weekly, the weekly show that brings you all you need to know in the strength game. I'm David Thomas Tao, joined by my colleague Phil Bleckman, and we have a lot on the agenda today. And just a reminder, Strength Weekly will be coming to you every week, so tune in for the latest and greatest for strong folks. And hey, you might learn a thing or two to help yourself get strong in the gym. But before we get into what's happened, including a new Mr. Olympia, make sure you subscribe to Barbend on YouTube, the very platform where you're tuning in right now. Phil, we have an amazing run of show. Should we give the people the rundown on what we're going to talk about today?
I think we should. I think we should prep everybody for what they're about to encounter. A lot of news in the bodybuilding world.
Here is today's run of show, and new. Derek Lunsford wins the 2023 Mr. Olympia, becoming the 18th man in history to hold that title and the first two-division champion in the competition's history. Chris Bumstead, the Canadian phenom, wins his 5th Classic Physique title. Andrea Shaw, Sydney Gillen, and Franciela Matos, they continue their high-stakes, epic runs at the top. Are they really the most dominating athletes in the bodybuilding game? And segment 4, we take a complete U-turn and we talk about the Bulgarian method for strength training, bust some myths, misconceptions, and explain why, yeah, it's probably not going to work for you at home. I'll get right ahead of that. Phil, of all these big stories today, which are you most excited to talk about?
I am most excited to talk about the dynasty building within each division in the space right now, because I feel like every single division you could have that sort of debate with the guys at the top two.
What I love about bodybuilding is if you think of who's the best, who's the most dominant, historic placements, much like in basketball, there's like a curveball you can just throw in there. It's not Jordan or LeBron, it's Wilt Chamberlain. You know what I mean? Bodybuilding has that as well. It's like, well, is it Ronnie? Is it Arnold? No, it's Phil Heath. You know what I mean? Like, you can always have this like dark horse third competitor that comes in out of nowhere. And I love that. And one thing I'm excited to talk about today is the most dominating athletes in today's bodybuilding scene, because it can be seen about 17 different ways. But as far as dominating athletes, we got to talk about the new champ in the men's open division, Derek Lunsford. He not only becomes only the 18th man to ever hold the title of Mr. Olympia, he becomes the first ever two-division winner. He won the men's 212-pound division in 2021. That was just 2 years ago. Is my math correct there? 2 years ago. Put on a ridiculous amount of mass while maintaining symmetry. Gets second place last year behind Hadi, the Iranian Wolf. And then Derek Lunsford comes back this year, switches the order, and walks away with the crown just 2 years after being the champ at 212 pounds. Phil, I got to toss it your way. How unlikely is this progression from 212 champ to men's open champ?
I think if anybody has been watching Lunsford as he ascended up to the 212 title back in 2021, and the frame that guy had at his height, I believe he's 5'7", when he first entered the Mr. Olympia contest last year, he had mentioned that he had put on like 8 pounds of muscle tissue. Now, that seems like not a lot for maybe guys like us who have a lot of space to grow. But for guys that have already maxed out their physiques, to tack on that kind of additional muscle tissue in a year's time frame is an unbelievable amount of mass to pack on.
He did bring some good symmetry, right? I saw some people on Instagram really trying to pick apart his physique, and they were really splitting hairs. He didn't have any glaring gaps in his physique. Yeah. Lower body, upper body. I mean, the guy brought a very good, well-conditioned package. Still a controversial win. Do you think, and this is just Phil personally, not Phil as a journalist, do you think he should be this year's Mr. Olympia?
The differences between these guys is I feel as though they beat each other in different aspects. And I think shows are won from the back primarily because there are more points to be scored from the back. Now, we have to think, like, we're looking at this stuff through a camera lens, right? And if the difference between watching somebody in a camera lens and seeing somebody up close in person, the muscle density, the striations, the graininess of the muscle, that may not translate as well over the camera as it will in person. And I think that if you were to look at CBum and really just go off of conditioning, he's untouchable. The man is untouchable in that realm. I think that's why he won it last year. I think it's why he was in contention again this year. I think the reason that Lunsford was able to take it from him this year primarily was because Lunsford's back shots are just so obviously dominant compared to everybody else. And I think that's what gave him the couple narrow points edge to take the gold.
If I'm a competitor in the men's open category, I'm a little scared of Lunsford right now because this is a competitor who is still in many ways filling out into the men's open division. He might even have more mass to pack on, and he's the reigning champ now. So transitioning to our second story on the day, because we could talk about that forever, Bumstead continues his reign. He's the top dog in that category 5 years in a row. The man really has nothing left to prove as the top classic physique competitor in history at this point, because the history of that division is not so long. One thing I want to ask in tossing it over to you, Phil, because I know you have a lot of thoughts here. Was this year closer than last year?
They don't call Bumstead the standard for nothing. And I think that Bumstead, his physique is exactly the standard that classic physique is designed for. Do you know what I mean? There's no reason, like, if he continues, he will never have to, like, concede the crown. Somebody will have to take it from him. And in order to do so, they will have to also be the standard and then come in with a better standard than him. So it's like guys like Breon, Breon's a two-time champ. He's come in fourth the last 2 years. It's not like Breon has slipped. His conditioning and his posing are immaculate. That guy is perfection. But like, he can't contend with the guys that are literally the standard of which they're being judged by.
He has also put in the work to make himself one of the most, I'd say tied for the lead in having the best routines and moving in a way that best shows off his physique on stage. And that cannot be understated, especially in classic physique, where it is all about aesthetics.
Yeah, and it's not like Bumstead is just being handed the division because of his popularity. I mean, yes, the guy has, 17 some odd million, whatever, Instagram followers, and he's like the biggest draw in the business or whatever it is. But like, if you look at back shots from when he won his first title to a back shot now, and see the progression that he has made in that time while staying atop the mountain. I mean, the guy is working. It is not like he's resting on his laurels. Like, he's earning his titles. So it's not like anything is being handed to the guy. Like, he's putting in the effort and it's paying off.
Make sure, if you want a recap of every division at the Olympia, I mean, we are talking every division, make sure to watch a video that we're going to link in the description below, where Phil Bleckman, one of the very faces you have seen on screen during this broadcast, goes into more detail. So I just want to give that quick shout out before we get to the next segment, which is on the women's side. The shortest reign we're about to talk about is back to back to back, a 3-peat. The longest is a 7-peat. What is that? It's a septafeat. And Phil, we can't talk about bodybuilding and the Olympia unless we talk about 3 big names on the women's side: Andrea Shaw, Sydney Gillen, and Franciela Matos. Sydney, 7 wins in a row. 7 wins in a row. 8 would take her into the realm of truly legendary all-time great. Franciela Matos has had the wellness division in a headlock. And Andrea Shaw, I mean, this is her 4th Miss Olympia in a row. Phil, where do these 3 competitors rank? If you had to throw in CBum, throw in Lunsford, right? Where do, among those 5 competitors, how might you rank the current top bodybuilders in the game?
I think the guys get a lot of the clout. I think if you were to look on a pound for pound basis, what the women have done, I think the women might be more impressive. And I say that because if you look at Andrea Shaw's run of 4 consecutive, she only has 4 because the Miss Olympia came back 4 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like it was gone for like 6 years, and then it came back, and then it's just been nothing but Shaw the entire time.
Yeah, and also like you look at what Matos has done in the wellness division. I mean, the wellness division is still new. Like, I can't believe wellness is. I remember when wellness was announced, right? Mm-hmm. Like, wellness was announced as an Olympia division after we started covering bodybuilding on barbell.com, which was not that long ago. Like, Barbell just didn't cover bodybuilding for our first like 4 or 5 years, right? Which a lot of people don't realize. Like, that's still a new division. How long can her reign be? I don't know.
Is that going to continue? If it does, it will be the most well-earned of any division in the sport. A, because it's new, so the division's going to evolve, right? It's still going through the growing pains of being a new division. And it's super close. So,
okay, if you had to rank, put Lunsford, CBum, and those three ladies in the conversation. If you had to go from, let's call it most dominant, right? Like, I like how you bring up Matos has won every wellness division that's been contested at the Olympia, but is she the most dominant? That's actually probably not the case, because we're seeing that margin of victory be pretty narrow because it's a very deep stacked field. How would you rank from most dominant to least dominant right now?
For what it's worth, I think the most dominant athlete is the one we talk about the least, because it's always the expected outcome. Sydney Gillen is the most dominant of any person in any division in my mind. She's got 7 in a row, and it's never been close. Yeah. At no point has it been close. You know, I mean, and it's not like the other athletes around her are slouches. Like, they are the top in the world. And it's still like, it's just like, oh yeah, it's Gillen, whatever. It's number 7, sure. You know, going on number 8, sure. Like, if we think about how many all time, it's like Mr. Olympia, you got Lee Haney and Coleman at 8. If you look at Miss Olympia, you got Iris Carroll at 10. Gillen's at 7. And it's not close. And she could compete for another 10 years and it wouldn't be close.
All these athletes, their entire lives are built around this. Bodybuilding, like, there's an off season, but there's not really an off season. This is your life year round. It is focused on this package you bring to the stage at this one weekend, at this one event, right? I cannot stress how much dedication and discipline that takes. But it is so expected for her to win, and has been for so many years, that it is rare in the realm of strength sports for it to be that way. Okay, so Gillen at the top for most dominant. Who would you put at number 2? And let's work our way down the list quickly here.
I would say I would put Shaw second. Okay. I think Shaw has been just dominant in Miss Olympia, so I think that I would put her there. I think Bumstead, because he's the standard for the division. Like, it's very rare that you have somebody with a physique that they are actually judging against, as opposed to judging you against a standard. Like, they're judging you against Bumstead, which is unique in any of the divisions. And then under, I would put Matos, only because the division is so young. If she can get a 4th and a 5th, like, I mean, we would have to recalibrate this conversation, but the division is too young, and I think still evolving. And so even though she has won 3 in a row, her lead in the division has gotten narrower and narrower every year, to the point where now it's down to a point. So if the division starts to adjust a little bit and evolve, and she can still maintain her position at the top, then I would move her up a couple ranks.
Cool. And then Lunsford, distant 5th, because we don't know. Bit of a question mark.
I think it's going to change hands every couple of years until either a new exact form is established, or somebody out of the woodwork just actually runs far and away and is just better on all sides.
Agree with that, Phil. Thank you. We're going to change focus completely and talk about a sport that is very aesthetically pleasing to look at, but it is not based on aesthetics. It is based on weight on the bar. Barbend's own Jake Dixon put up what I consider recently to be the best article actually explaining what the Bulgarian method is, its history, its implications, and what it means for the sport of weightlifting today. So I do want to give a special shout out. Make sure you read the full article at the link in the description below. Phil, when you hear the term Bulgarian method before reading this article from Jake, let's play some free association. What are a few concepts that came to mind?
I think the only thing that comes to mind for anybody that doesn't actually know what this methodology is, they just think Bulgarian split squat, and that's it. I think that's it. I think that's the extent that people are like, oh, Bulgarian, yeah, the split squat, cool. Moving on. That's all. I think that's all people would actually know.
But the funny part is the Bulgarian split squat has nothing to do with the Bulgarian style of training, because the Bulgarian style of training is, when you hear that term, it's most closely associated with the national team coach of Bulgaria for several decades, Ivan Abajev. And he developed this very intense, high-intensity form of training where athletes were maxing out their lifts multiple times a day. And there were only actually 6 lifts they were training in for the sport of weightlifting: the snatch, the clean and jerk, the back squat, the front squat, the power snatch, and the power clean. That was it. And Stefan Botev, who was one of the most successful legendary athletes to come out of this system, said, in the morning, we started with squats, then snatch, then clean and jerk, then squats again. In the afternoon, we performed snatch, clean and jerk, and back or front squats. At night, we do the same. This is our program every day for 8 to 10 hours. We maxed out between 50 and 60 times a day.
It's unfathomable the amount of work that this methodology incorporates. to max out that many times a day.
Two things. A lot of great athletes did not tolerate this system well, and they fell out of the Bulgarian weightlifting federation, for lack of a better term. They basically just couldn't cut it anymore, and Abajev plucked them from the program. This program does not work for unenhanced athletes. Doping regulation testing at the time was not what it is today. And in fact, we have seen the Bulgarian team in recent decades hit a bit of a wall because of the amount of doping violations. The Bulgarian system was a function of a particular time in the sport with a particular level or general lack of sophistication for doping controls. It truly was a perfect storm. And it's unlikely we will ever see the Bulgarian system be a viable strength training methodology moving forward in human history as long as doping controls are in place. Those are my thoughts. Phil, any reactions from you?
No, I think you summed it up pretty well. I mean, the article also sums it up really well. Humans are only going to progress and get better over time because the technology around people and the way that they can train and the analytics and data that we have will get better over time. But there is also a cap at what human capacity is. And I think it is reasonable that if you're like, this feels a little supernatural, it probably is.
Well, I would highly recommend anyone who's interested in the sport of weightlifting or just interested in the bounds of human performance and the science behind human performance and performance methodology in any strength discipline to check out the article from Jake Dixon linked below. That is it for Strength Weekly. It has been a massive week in strength, but there is plenty more going on this year, and we will be back next week bringing you the latest and greatest. Make sure you subscribe to Barbell on YouTube to stay up to date. Until then, I'm David Tao, joined by...
I'm Phil Bleckman. Thank you, everybody, for watching our Olympia coverage. It will only grow and get better from here, and we appreciate you tuning in.
Cheers, folks.